everybody, this is Raul with Bass Musician Magazine, and today we have the great honor and pleasure of chatting via Skype with Automatik Eden. Now, Automatik Eden is the name of the group. The players I have on my left, David Crocco and Cela Scott.
Yep.
So,
hello.
Hi.
Great having you guys here. Obviously, when I've got the two of you, we're kind of more the group. We know that not both of you play bass at the same time more often than not. So, David, we're going to kind of start with you because our readership is really focused on the bass. Tell us a little bit about your bass journey. How did you get started playing bass?
Actually, for me, it was when I was a very, very young kid, about 11 years old. My very first band, I kind of fell into having a little 9-year-old guitar virtuoso. And as we started writing songs, it was obvious that his skill level was, far past anything I could have ever dreamed of getting a guitar at that age. So when we started writing songs at the very early age, the most obvious thing for me was to start writing bass parts against his guitar. And we were at that age when it was almost too young to really have my chops at any great level. So it had a lot to do with listening and just being in that really super young age of where you just have no creative boundaries. There's not a right or a wrong at that point. So my interest in bass really came from the idea of coming from a creative point rather than coming from a chops point, because my first instrument at that point, was drums. That's what I was really natural at. But as we were writing songs and sitting in the bedroom together, working stuff out, the bass was the most natural thing. And it was interesting because I could have my own voice because he was so advanced at that age.
Nice. Well, and it's a pretty easy transition with the percussive element of bass for drummers to kind of want to blend together, because when a bassist is with a drummer, we're feeding a lot of times off of that drum movement. So
absolutely,
you can kind of see it from both sides and kind of tie it in nicely. And so you started young, progressed on picking up other instruments, I take it?
Yeah, the two strongest instruments that I had were drums and piano. But all along, we would come in and out of bass players, and it very much like it is now with Cela and I. It was this other player who I spent most of my developmental years with. So anytime that we were recording or writing, I would just continue on doing a lot of the bass parts, playing, and just grew with that. And then, of course, by that point, I started developing some bass heroes and understanding what it was I liked about them and what I'd like to hear, and what I wanted to bring. Even if I didn't have the chops, there are always the elements that you bring out of somebody else that you can bring into your own, whether it's rhythmic or whether it's note choice, which for me, more often than not, it was note choice.
Gotcha. And simultaneously, Cela, how were you developing musically? What were you doing kind of early on?
I was singing from a really young age. That's kind of what hooked me first into music. I was in a touring children's choir when I was a kid, and we went all over the place. So that was kind of a really good foundation to lay in a lot of ways. As I got older, I played a little piano when I was a kid. I did not have the discipline as a child to stick with an instrument. So I came into playing guitar much later, in my 20s, and I'm actually learning bass now. But Dave's been a pretty well-rounded musician for a long time, playing a lot of different things. And I think I'm getting there very, very late, but I'm getting there.
Well, it's never too late, and as many people with all instruments, I mean, it's an ongoing journey. And I think that sometimes when you run into a virtuoso or you run into some kid that just rips it up, because like right now, there's one that comes to mind, this 11-year-old out of New Jersey that can outplay a lot of people that I know.
Wow.
And it makes you just want to set it down and go, okay, I gotta walk away from this. But in all fairness,
Crazy.
in all reality, I mean, it is part of the journey. And as you hear things and you pick things up, circumstances change. I mean, some of the most famous bassists, I mean, McCartney, I'll use him always as an example. They needed a bassist, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And
yeah, and he found his own sound. Just found his own. It's of course they had influences, but I think that's true of any. We can speak of this in bass playing, but also when you're talking about starting later and it's always a journey. I think what any of us are ultimately looking for is our own voice.
Right.
And of course, some of us are led towards chops, some of us are led to the virtuosity, but in the end, the reason people latch on to somebody else is because they're being their authentic self on whatever instrument they're playing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key things is that there's that aha moment where you realize that the bass contribution that you're adding into a tune is coloring the feeling and the sentiment of the music itself. And this is, again, I think another classic example of Beatles music where some of those choices that Paul made, you're going, okay, that's totally what made that song for me. I mean,
so creative.
All you've got to hear is like that beginning of Come Together, and you're like, okay, here we go. I know what's going on, and it's the same thing that a lot of people have redone the tune, because that's kind of in the greatest form of flattery, redoing somebody else's tune. But one of the constant things they keep is that bass line. They're like, we're not going to change that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a McCartney fanatic, as I'm sure so many of us are, but that's a perfect example. Bass is technically down the list of my skills, but as far as creatively, it's one of my favorite instruments to play, and it might be at the top of my list. And again, not from a chop standpoint, but from still maintaining that childlike aspect of there's no right or wrong, but there is, when it's right. It's not, you just there's just a certain creative freedom for me, and maybe it even is in limitation. There's a lot of benefits to limitations, and when you have so much to work with, maybe from a technical standpoint, you can listen in a different way, and that's one of my favorite things about playing bass and coming up. One of my favorite parts of all music is coming up with bass parts.
Nice. Well, and transitioning from the topic of coming together, how did you guys come together as a group?
Well, we were in a play together.
Yeah, this is how we first met to begin with. We were in a play together, the play Hair. It was in Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, the famous hippie play. And that's where we met. It was kind of in a music setting, and it was Dave's first and last acting experience.
Yeah,
he was not an actor.
I just love the soundtrack, and I was able to get enough guys together to be the band in Hair. So
gotcha.
So that's how we met. But not long after that, when Cela was in college, I had picked up a guitar, and her first and her strongest point, particularly back then, was an incredible knack for melody. So I just started playing something, and she picked up a book of poetry.
It's like my background was more in musical theater at that point. That's kind of what I transitioned into when I was a teenager, and then I think because of that, having that sensibility, it was pretty easy for me to be able to pick up some text, and I was going to acting school at the time out here at USC, so I always had a lot of text lying around, whether it was from a play or this was an old Lord Byron poem, I think, that I had on hand, and he was just like, sing something over this. I'm like, la da 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 da. I don't know, I need some words or something to make this make sense. So I just picked up what was lying around, and all of a sudden I could craft a melody around that.
Fast.
If I had some kind of placeholder words.
Gotcha.
It was kind of like an actor thing too. I think having to like pick up a piece of text and like make something out of it sort of helped me be able to do that.
So after about 5 minutes of doing that, felt like we could do this.
It was really cool, and we had already been together for a long time at that point, but we sort of had this aha moment of like,
we could make music together.
We could do something.
Yeah. And the name Automatic Eden, it's always kind of funny where band names come from. Where does this come from?
From our fantastic fashion art director, Mr. Christopher Jelly. He's been a champion of our cause, and he's just a brilliant Englishman from Surrey, England, that latched onto us and has been a great help in our fashion.
Yeah, he's been such a great friend to us,
director.
And we ended up just kind of bringing him on as artistic director. He did all of our photography and styling for the record.
Cool.
And he loves, he hails from the day of
Bowie and
Roxy music, and that's what he loves, and we love it too. But he's very honed in on the visual sense, and kind of like the overall like titles are really important to him. So he wanted to help us pick a band name, and he ended up coming up with it.
Wild. And progressing as a group, you guys have been playing together. I was seeing some stuff going back about 7 years, longer perhaps.
Yeah.
Automatic Eden has been a couple years, I guess, before that.
2 years, but it was playing out as far as 7 years ago, I believe.
Gotcha. And you've had some diversification, and it's funny how acting comes in, because you've had some involvement in Star Trek. And as a old school Trekkie, and probably one of the few people that actually has a set of blueprints for the original Enterprise, how did that development come about?
That is so cool. Well, we're both Trek fanatics ourselves.
I'm watching right now. I'm just got into season 3 of the originals. I'm binge watching the original 3 seasons of Star Trek right now.
There you go.
And, last night I saw. I think I watched 6 episodes last night.
Yeah. Oh my God, so great. It was a little bit random, but I was working on this goofy comedy movie as an actor, and I met Tim Russ, who was a character, one of the leads on Voyager, who played Tuvok. And he was another actor in the thing, and he's a musician as well. He's a really great blues guitarist, singer, and has a band out here.
Nice.
So we kind of bonded over music, and he said, I'm working on a fan-funded pilot for a potential internet-based Star Trek series, like a streaming series spin-off of the... And Walter Koenig was part of it, acted in it, and helped put it together, and several actors from various versions of the series, from the original onward. And the fans were really behind it, and they made their money pretty quickly to be able to do what ended up being a feature length. Like it's like a TV movie length pilot for the series.
Very cool.
And so that's still on. People can find it on YouTube. It's free on YouTube. It's called Star Trek Renegades.
And we got the song out of it.
Yeah, through having kind of an acting part in that, we ended up doing the title song.
Captain of My Soul, right?
Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, very, very cool. Well, I know probably a lot of my bass people will go, oh, what are you talking about? But no, it's very interesting. And most recently, again, I know you guys have a debut album, and start with a single, Madland.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that.
That was interesting. Our producer, we pretty much finished the record, and our producer, Sean Bevan, producer extraordinaire, he did Marilyn Manson, Antichrist Superstar, he did Downward Spiral.
And has had quite a career as a bass player.
Which
is his first instrument.
He played with Eric Carmen. And anyway, we had finished the record, and we were listening to it down, and he and his wife were about to go to Vegas. And he goes, "What? You need one more pop, you need one more upbeat song." He goes, "The record's great, it's moody, it's cool." He goes, "But you need one more upbeat song." He goes, here's your assignment. We're going to Vegas. Write a single." So Sean has always loved the place in Cela's voice where she can sound like Chrissie Hynde from The Pretenders.
Okay.
She's got an aspect of that in her voice. So I love The Pretenders.
Snarky, he calls it snarky.
Snarky, yeah, very snarky aspects. So he went away, and we worked and worked, and was staring at a blank page, and I was listening to a bunch of Pretenders stuff, and knowing I wanted to do something upbeat, and just from listening to a bunch of different stuff and listening to some Motown, that song was written off that bass line, which is a very busy kind of almost Motown-y bass line, and from that bass line, we spent we did not finish it by the time he was home, because the music was done by the time he was home in a few days, but the lyrics took another couple of weeks. But that song was written all off that bass line. I knew I wanted to approach that song from a bass line and build up.
Very cool. And what projects are we looking coming from Automatik Eden in the future? What are you guys working on now?
We just started working on our next album. We have another, as a matter of fact, another song that would kind of fall in the same vibe as the single Madland. It might be a little more, less on the funky side, more on the Roxy music side, but it also was started with a bass line that I really dug and came up with. So
yeah, we've ended up writing that way a lot.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ways to write, is starting with the bass. So that song is done. We're just working towards the next record right now.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Any touring plans? Anything in the future? That's something you guys want to do? Or?
We've been getting a lot of support out in Cleveland, Ohio, which has been which I kind of grew up. My musical career started there. I was there from 13 to 23, and we had a reggae band that took us under their wing that was huge there. I mean, they could sell 2 nights a week in anywhere in Ohio, 600 people rooms, and we became good friends with them, and they took us under their wing. So when we were 17 and 18, we were playing top clubs in Cleveland, and this record managed to get back into my friend's hands and onto a radio station there. We're getting a ton of airplay. We've been number one at this one station for a few weeks now. So we're going to go back and set up a tour for maybe that area in Nashville, because we're from after that we were in Nashville, so doing a little work out there.
Well,
which is fun for us. That's where we're from.
Yeah,
it's like a reunion.
Totally. Well, and Nashville's a great music city, so you can't really go wrong going there.
Incredible.
Yeah, you talk about chops. My God, it's like you walk into a room and you see somebody playing guitar like you wish you could ever play, and that just happens to be his third instrument.
Yeah. And then he goes back to bussing tables because he just works there, and he just jumped up. Everybody. Yeah. Awesome.
That is a player's town.
It is totally, and it's a good and a bad, because it can be kind of intimidating, but by the same token, if you're ready to wade in, there's a lot that can be happening, and you can find yourself real busy.
Definitely.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask. I know everybody always wants to know a little bit about your gear, David. What gear are you using to get your bass sound? Instrument of choice.
It's funny because this record had all different. I think we probably used 4 or 5 different basses. Jazz Precision. Crazy enough, I believe Madland was on an old Dan Electro.
Wow.
Yeah, an old Dan Electro. I think we used it from way, I don't know if this is the 80s, I don't know if you remember the Factor X basses, the white. Yeah.
That was a fretless one. We ended up using that, didn't we?
Yeah, there was a Fender fretless I used as well. I think those were the four main ones.
Gotcha.
So, and I got to be honest, again, for me, because it's not my first instrument, it's so much more for me. And I guess this would be even with somebody with really great chops, but for me, it might just be the first thing I pick up, and that dictates how the song is going to be. So it can be kind of a crappy bass or something that's not, but that's the sound. It's kind of like how Jack White is with guitars. He's played some great guitars, but he also played that Sears and Roebuck,
that plastic guitar.
Guitar.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because with a lot of bass players, there's that constant search. It's kind of like a holy grail kind of looking, where you're trying to find the thing that feels right, that gives you your voice. and you try on a lot of things for size, and I think a lot of people will go a lifetime where they, you know, they tried a little of this and they did a little of that and they did a little of this and they like this thing for this one thing.
Yeah.
And then it boils down to one factor or another. And a great example of that, it keeps coming up, but some of the older bass players that I've talked to, it can come down even to weight. Because
yes.
when you're 18 and you know you're holding one of those Thunderbird mahogany basses that weighs 13, 14 pounds, and you're going to be on stage for 2 hours or something.
Yeah.
You know,
travel with a chiropractor.
I know. Your back can handle it, whereas, you know, when you've been doing this, one of the classic examples, Lee Sklar, who is going to be touring with Phil Collins coming up, just had his 70th birthday. You know? And we got a chance to see his Warwick signature bass, and it's got all kinds of little details that to me are more comfort oriented than just looks or color or anything like that.
Right.
So, you know, it kind of boils down to it, and, you know, if as you're going along you find the one, you kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, this is it. Like with Paul McCartney, the fact that he was left-handed, you can flip a Hofner, run it left-handed, and you're fine.
True.
And you're fine.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
You know,
that's where I'm at now as I'm learning bass, and I'm going to need to choose one soon. So I'm like, those are all the things going through my mind. I'm a little too inexperienced yet to know exactly what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Well, it comes back to feel, and especially, again, hand size. Would you know what you're looking at with neck shape, because there's some of them that are almost like a baseball bat with strings on it, and so you'd probably go, okay, I want something a little more slender. Ross Valerie, that plays with Journey, plays one of these Jackson basses, and they're kind of generic-y. That you kind of go, dude, you play with Journey. Why did pick something fancy? You know?
Yeah, right.
But he does a 4-string Jackson, but he tunes it low. He tunes it like a 5-string, so he goes low B. And his explanation was the neck is narrow, his hands are kind of on the smaller side, and he feels comfortable with that. So part of it can be the physicality of it. Part of it can be just the feel and how it accommodates to your body, the weight. And then there's always the style thing. And I always, when I think of style and bass, I always think of like Bootsy Collins and his Star bass. You go, that cannot be comfortable to play. But it looks fabulous. It's got some funk to it, and on stage, you know, I'm sure.
And he's got to be Bootsy.
Totally.
He's got to be Bootsy.
You're flashing along. Well, David and Cela, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and pulling over on the side of the road to talk to us.
Thank you, Raul.
We really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Always great. If people want to know how to find out more about you and what's going on, new album, all this stuff, where's the best place for them to look?
I think our website's probably the best. It's automaticeden.com.
Automatic with a K.
Yeah.
Interesting. You can get all the info from there.
Perfect. Well, of course, stay in touch with us. Let us know when new stuff is going on. Folks, you've seen it here. David Crocco, Cela Scott, Automatic Eden, coming to you live on Bass Musician Magazine.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Thank you.